Hello, welcome to Rappler Talk. I'm Marites Vitug, Editor-at-Large. Joining us today is former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario, who is also our ambassador to the United States. It is a timely interview because July 12, a few days ago, was the second-year anniversary of the Philippine victory in The Hague against our maritime dispute with China. Welcome to Rappler Talk, Secretary or Ambassador Del Rosario. A few days ago, you hosted the ADR Institute hosted a forum, and you spoke very strongly against China. Are these the first things that come to your mind when you think of the second-year anniversary of our victory? You said China is a abettor. No, I mean the Philippines is an abettor. The Philippines is grand larcenies. But what are the first thoughts that come to your mind every time you think of the Philippine victory in The Hague?
I think that was 2 years ago, so if I think back to that day when this victory was announced, we of course were very happy and elated, and I thought that all Filipinos should be delighted with this victory. We found out surprisingly that the government was unhappy, and we couldn't understand why until we learned that they were apprehensive about displeasing China. So our view is, what did we achieve here? Well, clearly the outcome served to invalidate the indisputable sovereignty claim over the entire South China Sea, as expressed by and represented by the 9-dash line. So this is a huge victory. We were able to benefit all the nations because of the clarification of the entitlements. We also found that the outcome would have served as a basis for enhancing the rules-based order. So those are the things that came to our minds, and we couldn't understand the government position. But I guess that was a prelude to what we would be expecting.
Yes, but did you expect the next government, I mean Duterte's government, to take an opposite view, to change policy towards China?
No, not at all, Marites. We thought that, as I said, that this overwhelming victory would be welcomed by them, and that we would look for a way to move it forward. But that was not to be.
Yes, so we were talking earlier about July 12, 2016. You were in the office of the Solicitor General together with Justice Antonio Carpio. And you said that Mr. Jose Calida was very happy and pleased about the news. What happened after that?
I think we were talking about the incremental payment that had not been made and which is due up to this particular time. The amount is not so big. It's less than $1 million. The Solicitor General was very pleased about the outcome, and he was saying that because of this victory, we can rest assured that the incremental payment would be made immediately. But up to now, I understand it has not been paid.
So, have you heard from Foley Hague, our the Philippine lawyers? What will they do? It's been 2 years and they haven't been paid the last tranche.
Yeah, I think they were talking of filing a legal case against the Philippines. But at the end, I think they thought better of it, and at the end of the day, they're still trying to collect, and I hope that we can finally pay that incremental.
It's been 2 years, and the lawyers whom, as you said, were very brilliant in arguing the Philippine case, who gave us this victory, remain to be paid. On the next issue, when you were still Foreign Affairs Secretary, and what was your plan for, in case the decision of the tribunal would be handed down during your time, what were the steps you were going to take
We had actually several plans. I don't remember the details at this point. My memory is going fast. But I do recall distinctly that while the case was being heard, we were full-time in terms of maximizing our efforts to try and win over members of the responsible community of nations to support us. And obviously, we felt we were going to win because we were in the right. We also made plans for what to do if a victory was intended for us. So that also was put into motion in terms of completion. And believe it or not, we also planned for what to do in case we're defeated.
Oh, really? What
Yeah.
was the plan?
Well, the plan is we follow the rule of law. So
Accept the
yes,
decision.
yes, yes. Precisely, we're trying to promote the rule of law, so that was very consistent for us to be able to do that.
You also mentioned that the Philippines would issue a statement right after the victory, and on that basis, the allies of the Philippines would follow suit. I think that was one of the plans which never happened. Do you still hear from your contacts in countries that are sympathetic to the Philippines?
Yes, but not as often as in the beginning. Of course, by that time I was already out of government, but I had many foreign ministers who now and then I would contact, or now and then I would run into, or who would contact me to say that we did such a great job in terms of bringing them into the fold to support the rule of law, and now that we have a victory, where are we? That was the tone of the conversation most of the time.
So you think that this 6 years under the new government, under Duterte, do you think that this will weaken the position of the Philippines in promoting international rules-based system?
I think our people alone, based on the surveys just conducted by SWS, are already saying that we should be asserting our sovereignty, our rights in terms of the outcome of the Hague exercise. We should be listening to our people. We should be paying attention to the Constitution that mandates that the President should protect what is ours. And we should be listening to the international community. And we should be looking to our own welfare in terms of the future. Are we giving up our patrimony for future generations simply because we don't want to deal with this outcome? We need to revisit that strategy, and we need to do something quickly. It's not like we don't have avenues to pursue to change our approach. There are many avenues. As I said a couple of days ago, we can seek a resolution from the UN General Assembly. We can seek support from various multilateral organizations, ASEAN and so forth. And we can do bilateral engagements with those who have the same mindset in terms of promoting the rule of law. And all of these and more are avenues open to us. But the President does not do this. He has decided to shelf it. And many times he talks about we either do what we're doing or we go to war. I don't think that is very practical. I don't think it's going to happen. To begin with, our Constitution renounces war as an instrument of foreign policy. Secondly, China does not think war is a good option. since, as you probably know, 55% of their GDP is trade. 50% of their oil supply are to the extent 50% imported. So they need the shipping lanes to be able to move on. And these shipping lanes are made up of the Malacca Straits, the Indian Ocean, and these are all dominated by the United States naval power. So it's wrong to say that, but if you think deeply about it, there are many who would say that we're already at war.
How so?
Well, let me explain that. I'm not sure that I agree with that, and I'm also not sure that I disagree with that statement. Because what is China's objective? China's objective is to have a lake, and the South China Sea is their lake. So if that's called the whole salami, what they've been doing is they've gone into salami slicing. Okay, so the salami slicing is enough to criticize them, but not enough to condemn them. So the question to ask is how much of the salami have they sliced, and what is the point at which we should say to ourselves, hey, we got to start moving. But I think if you talk about island building, that's accomplished, militarizing, that's also almost there. So that salami is almost gone. And are you going to wait for it to be off the table before you actually do something about it? I think, we talk about, for example, not doing anything. And yet our allies, our security partners are out there patrolling. You see Japan, you see US, you see Great Britain, you see France, they're all out there, and other countries. Before I stepped down in 2016, we thought it was necessary for us to seek US assistance in terms of undertaking joint patrols in our EEZ. And so we went to Washington. I went to Washington twice in 3 months to try and get them to approve that request of ours. And finally we got it done.
In
And 2016, yes. Just before I stepped down. And we actually got the approval. We got the operationalization of the exercise. But the president stopped it and said it might displease China. So it's difficult to understand where we stand.
As you were saying, the Duterte makes us choose between talking and going to war, which you said it's false because there are so many diplomatic ways. So do you think that's a deliberate attempt to confuse the public? But of course the surveys show the public is not confused. But do you think this is the real understanding of the president, or are you hopeful there will be changes in the next 4 years?
Well, I'm confused.
Maybe speaking of confusion or clarity, Vietnam during your time, even up to today, they stand up to China when it comes to maritime disputes in South China Sea. Yet they're able to conduct trade, do business with China. What do they do differently? How do they do this compared to the Philippines?
I've done business with Vietnam as foreign secretary. We were very good partners with them. We voted together in the ASEAN issues, the difficult ones. We were always together. Vietnam distinguishes itself in terms of its. They have a patriotism of the highest order, and they are also very courageous in their ability to stand up for what they think is right for them. And in my many years of cooperating with them, I have gained the highest admiration and respect for the Vietnamese people.
So why are they able to still do economic, diplomatic, good business with China, at the same time protesting whenever China violates their sovereignty?
Well,
Why can't the Philippines do this?
I want to tell you about the very first meeting I had with then Vice President Xi Jinping. He was, of course, very intimidating, very powerful, and even then. And so we talked about how we should pursue the challenges that we're facing. And we talked about the South China Sea, and immediately he asserted that they had indisputable sovereignty as expressed by or represented by the 9-dash line. And my humble suggestion, very respectfully, I said to him, yes, we have these challenges, Excellency, why don't we pursue a regular bilateral agenda which involves economics, people to people. So we would be covering trade, we would be covering tourism, investments, and so forth and so on. And I said, we can pursue that on a regular channel, and then let us abstract the contentious issues and deal with that separately. And he was very quick to cut me off. He says, no, there is no dispute. We have indisputable sovereignty. That phrase always keeps coming up on a bilateral basis with China. You cannot escape it. It keeps repeating itself. So we suggested that. Before we went into arbitration, we invited China. China claims that we did something that we should not have done. If you consult the United Nations, arbitration is a friendly act, and it should be part of the diplomatic process in terms of resolving disputes.
Even now, under this new government, they will never succeed in bringing up the issue, because in your experience already in the past, you were foiled immediately by, at the time, Vice President Xi Jinping.
Yes. I think that statement is correct, but we have maintained that that in the past, bilateral exchanges with China in terms of settling a dispute has never worked. It will never work. They are the elephant in the room, and the only other person in that room with that elephant is you. And you will obviously get nowhere with them. So you're not looking for a bilateral engagement, you're looking for a multilateral engagement.
That's good advice, sir, for this government, because they're taking the path of bilateral consultations.
Yeah.
And as Secretary Cayetano said, they brought it up twice in 2 years during their bilateral meetings. Going to another issue, sir, maybe
maybe I should just tell you what our experience is.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
We have brought it up each time. Each time we met with China, we brought it up because it was very important to us.
Well, that was 100 times maybe, sir, over.
Well, at least 50 times.
Yes. You wrote a piece about Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana's statement that you mishandled, or the previous government mishandled, the China maritime dispute. When you wrote your piece, have you discussed it with him in person, and what was his response?
No, I've not had the privilege of meeting with Del recently. He remains, in my book, a good friend, and I wish him all the best, but we've not touched base.
In a recent Philippine-Australia dialogue, he was the keynote speaker, and an Australian academic asked him, Secretary Lorenzana, has China won in the South China Sea? And his response was, yes, China has won in the South China Sea, but the Philippines has also won legally. So do you agree? And how can this be this view be reconciled?
That statement that was made that the Philippines may have won in the tribunal and but China has won on the ground. I'm not sure I agree with that, because it seems to say that the situation is now fait accompli. We don't believe that it's fait accompli. As I said, our friends are out there patrolling, doing their freedom of navigation. US, Australia, Japan, Great Britain, France, they're all out there, and where are we? We should be out there with them.
So I think that despite all your messages, all your statements, same with the other advocates, Justice Carpio, and the academics who advocate asserting Philippine sovereignty or the victory, making it work even partly in South China Sea. Have you heard feedback from your former department, Foreign Affairs Department? Have they reached out to you, or at least discussed your experience?
Yes, they have, but I'm not free to discuss what has been discussed between. I'm a little afraid for them.
Oh, I see. But based on these discussions, do you have hope that there will be changes in policy towards China, at least in the next 4 years?
That's a very good question. I think I have several statements to make in relation to that. I think we should not be bullied by China. That's number one. Number two, we should pay attention to our people. Our people are telling us, 8 out of 10, 80% of our people are telling us we should stand up to fight for what is ours. Okay. I think we should pay attention to them when they tell us, yes, you're on the right track in terms of building up your Navy, build it up some more. Okay. We should at least have a minimum credible deterrence prepared for any eventuality. Thirdly, we should listen to what they have to say when they make a statement that we don't trust China. Okay. I think we have had our own experiences regarding that. You've written that in your book, in terms of Scarborough, where there was an agreement, and the agreement was broken, and then they say there was no agreement. Well, that's very much expected of China. I've had many situations with them that would be similar to that experience. We need to. What's very sad is that Marites is the president was quick to embrace China even before he was able to establish that we should be treated with sovereign equality. I'm a little sad about that, and I think that's sufficient response to your question.
Yes, but maybe if you look at it if you try to analyze the situation, was this just a reaction against the former government, President Aquino, or is there a genuine desire, a genuine love for China? Because he keeps saying he loves China. China is going to protect him from any plot to oust him. So maybe it's a different worldview, or is it, as you said, where it's confusing to.
Yeah, it remains confusing. Really.
And there are countries from where the Philippines could learn.
Yes.
Those which have been given huge loans by China, Sri Lanka.
Yes.
I think you've experienced Laos and Cambodia, how China has held sway over these two countries.
Yes, and you're also, as you said, you read about Sri Lanka and Djibouti, and how they have fallen aside by means of this debt trap that was
Yes.
set by China. But these are the things that we should be watching out for. For example, the North Rail. The North Rail was something that was inherited by President Aquino's administration, and very quickly it demonstrated that it had technical inconsistencies, that it was overpriced, and so when we wanted to declare the contract null and void, we learned that there was sovereign guarantees behind the transaction, so that it's not so easy to just declare it null and void without having to pay back everything that you owed. And when we went back to China to say that it was quite a large amount, we said, could we do this, could we pay this in installments? They said, no, you pay it back right away. And if we failed to pay it back right away, it would have triggered cross defaults, which would have affected our international transactions. So this is deadly for, we have to watch out for transactions like this, but this is how it operates.
For the last question, Ambassador Del Rosario, can you talk to us about how to move forward on this China issue, on how to make our victory work? What is the way to go?
Well, I was at a dinner last night, and there was talk about where the United States is at this time, where we are, where China is. And my contribution was, I think the United States was a very good promoter of the rule of law in the past, which set the climate for security, peace, and prosperity. Now they're sort of, we don't know where they are. We need to still try to establish that we belong under their security umbrella. Okay, that's one. The second is, I think the United States would like us to, and this goes for its security alliances, to see if we can strengthen ourselves by getting together. And I think there is a security alliance now called the Quad. It's composed of the United States, Australia, Japan, and India. And these are all democracies. And all of them are working for a rules-based order. So I think we belong there. We have to seek out their assistance and cooperation. And that's how we will get to strengthen ourselves. But we have to, we are shying away from traditional allies. We shouldn't do that. This is a time for us to be proactive in terms of making friends and stating that we want to be part of this rules-based order.
How about ASEAN?
ASEAN is a little bit divided because of the Chinese influence. Because of this consensus rule, I think we will get very little out of ASEAN.
On that note, at least there's hope. There's hope. We have allies to work with, the Quad and then the U.S. security umbrella, maybe to a certain extent ASEAN. So on that note, we end the interview. Thank you very much, Ambassador Del Rosario, for joining us. And we hope that we'll talk to you again, maybe when there's a change in position of the government.